Let me start by introducing our ALP leadership team. I'm Bonnie O'Regan, and I've been the ALP facilitator since 2012. This chart illustrates the whole amount of our leadership team and our roles and our responsibilities. Myself, Dr. Benjamin Marcus, who is the KAELA Social Studies Coordinator, Mr. Mike Reed, K-8 Math Coordinator, and Mrs. Tara Fogel, K-8 Science Coordinator, work collaboratively. As an ALP leadership team, our primary goal is to maintain multiple effective lines of communication with all stakeholders. In doing so, we aim to deliver concise and transparent information. Please take note, when you communicate with one of us, then you've communicated with all of us. During this session, I will be answering the three most frequently asked questions. What is the placement process for ALP? Are there sample test questions? And when will the students take the test? And when will parents know if their child is placed? Before we get into the placement process, let's start with what is the Advanced Learning Program, better known as ALP. In the Greenwich Public Schools, it is our policy to provide a comprehensive educational program for all students. Our mission is to teach students who give evidence of significantly high performance capability in an accelerated and enriched curriculum in various subjects with their academic peers. The Advanced Learning Program uses a content replacement and acceleration programming model for identified students in grades 3 through 8 language arts and 3 through 5 math. All identified students in grades 3 through 8 meet daily in the ALP classroom in lieu of general education classrooms to receive their instruction in English language arts and/or math. We aim to provide consistent instruction across all schools in our district, and in doing so, we make sure to allocate the appropriate resources to meet the developmental needs of all students. Our grade 2 program is an enrichment model in the areas of reading and math. Once identified, students are pulled out for 30-minute blocks for a total of 2 hours a week for enrichment in reading and/or enrichment in math. Greenwich uses a 3-phase placement process to identify specific academic student needs and match learners with an appropriate education. The 3 phases are referral, assessment or evaluation, and placement. This graphic shows the full process. Yes, I know, it looks very overwhelming at first, so let's just break it down. The referral phase is the direct procedure that enters a student into the evaluation assessment phase. The referral process in grades 2 through 5 is broken down further into 3 tiers. In tier 1, students in grades 2 through 5 are first flagged as potentially needing advanced program by a review of academic performance. We call this their body of evidence. In tier 1, it includes assessments at a district level. In tier 2, teachers add to the body of evidence by looking at the assessments given in class and also refer students whose assessments did not prompt that initial referral through that teacher referral form. In tier 3, parents are invited to add even more information to the body of evidence using a similar Google form. They can also opt to refer their child. This form is emailed to all parents and can be also found on the district level ALP website. After the pool of referred students has been compiled, the ALP leadership team cross-references to make sure every student has a teacher input form completed. A bit more about these forms. The questionnaires are based off of the gifted behaviors continuum. This continuum compiles information on traits in 4 categories: cognitive, creative, affective, and behavioral. The markers on these forms are among the many used in the identification process at grades 2 through 5. Students referred will then complete a battery of secondary assessments to determine aptitude and ability. This is what we call the evaluation or assessment phase. Here, we gather information necessary for the placement decision. The assessments students take provide a multitude of information that is not already within the body of evidence gathered. Depending upon the academic referral area, students may take between 3 and 8 assessments. There is a CogAT, which is age normed. This assessment evaluates relationships, systems thinking, and cognitive ability. Students then take the NWEA map. This is a grade level normed and assesses both content and concepts. The assessment is adaptive, giving students questions at and above grade level. The final assessments are performance tasks. These are district level normed, open-ended responses that dig into application and reasoning. Please note that I kept the science components on here to show the identification assessments. However, at this point in time, the grade 2 assessments are in math and reading only for the enrichment program. So let's take some time to look at what each of these assessments look like. The first type of assessment is an ability test. We use a cognitive abilities test, better known as the CogAT. This test is not like a math or spelling test where if you know the words or facts, you can score 100%. There is no defined curriculum for the CogAT. It is not a test that can be studied for in traditional terms. This system evaluates relationships, systems thinking, and a cognitive ability in 2 symbol systems, words and numbers. In the verbal battery, students will be presented with 20 to 24 questions, are given a set amount of time to complete each subtest. You can see here sample questions for each of those subtests. Each subtest looks at a different component of the system's thinking with words. In verbal analogies, students are asked to examine a pair of words and think of ways in which they are related. They then apply this relationship to a third word to generate a new pair of words related to each other in the same as the first pair. In the sentence completion, students read an incomplete sentence and then select the answer choice that best completes the sentence. In verbal classification, students examine 3 words and think of ways in which they are alike. Then they select the answer choice that belongs in the same group. In my experience with the second graders, especially when they get to verbal classification, they look at apple, orange, pear, and want to name the group of fruit instead of putting the other item in that goes in the group, the lemon. In the quantitative battery, the test questions require the same processes as in the verbal analogies test, but use quantitative concepts rather than verbal concepts. The 3 subtests range between 16 and 18 questions each to be answered, and each are answered in a certain amount of time. The verbal number analogies, students examine 2 pairs of numbers and determine the rule that pairs follow. Then they apply the rule to a given number and choose the answer that generates a third pair of numbers that follow the same rule. In number puzzles, each question presents an equation in which elements are missing. Students must substitute numbers for the missing elements and solve the equation. In number series, each question contains a series of numbers that follow a pattern. Students identify the pattern the numbers follow, then apply that pattern to find the next number in the series. The next type of test assesses both content and concepts. The assessment we use is the NWEA Measures of Academic Process. We refer to this as NWEA or MAP. The MAP growth measures what students know and what they're ready to learn next. To do this, it is a computer adaptive assessment. If your child answers a question correctly, the next question is more challenging. If they answer it incorrectly, the next one is easier. This type of assessment challenges, and so forth, see going on. It challenges students at the top performers without overwhelming students whose skills are below grade level. By dynamically adjusting to each student's performance, MAP growth creates a personalized assessment experience that accurately measures performance, whether the student performs on, above, or below grade level. Now let's look at what some of the content questions look like. In the reading assessment, assesses students' understanding of specific reading concepts in both literary and informational text. These are sample questions assessing a student's knowledge within key ideas and details, where students are asked to read and comprehend text, make inferences and predictions, and draw conclusions. Here are some sample questions assessing the student's knowledge within language, craft, and structure. Students analyze the structure of literary and informational text and then evaluate the author's craft and purpose. Questions within the reading assessment also focus on vocabulary acquisition and use. Students are asked to use context clues and reference materials to decipher word meanings and nuance. The math assesses a student understanding of specific math concepts. These are the sample questions assessing students' knowledge within operations and algebraic thinking. Students represent and solve problems using the 4 operations. These are samples assessing students' knowledge within measurement and data. Note, they're asked to select, they're not asked here multiple choice of questions, but they're asked how to construct some responses. For more sample questions, you may go online. This is not an actual test and is not representative of the content. The samples given in the previous slides represent the content level that the students are assessed with. These samples in here are samples of the types of questions that students are given within MAP. I'm sure you noticed that the questions within CogAT and the MAP are either multiple choice or ask students to construct a specific answer in a specific way. Now, I'm really telling my age here by recalling a certain PSA. This is your brain. This is your brain on standardized test. The last type of assessments we use are performance assessments. Whereas CogAT answers the question, how well are you reasoning? And the MAP answers the question, do you know it? Performance assessments help answer the question, how well can you use your reasoning and what you know to generate knowledge? Performance assessment tests require students to demonstrate their knowledge, skills, and strategies by creating a response or product. Unlike the CogAT and MAP, in which students select one of the responses provided, a performance assessment is a blank sheet of paper and students are asked to perform a task and generate their own responses. In the language arts performance assessment, students are asked to read a short piece of literature that is written on their grade, that is written at grade level expectations, and respond to 4 open-ended questions. In this sample, students were asked to read the fable of the lion and the mouse. Then they are asked questions about the fable. What does the fable tell you about friendship? Use details from the text to support your answer. What's the moral of the story that Aesop wants us to know? Again, use details from the text to support your answer. After reading, think about the change the lion goes through in the fable. Explain how the lion changed from the beginning of the fable to the end, and also explain why he changed. Use details from your text to support your answer. Notice here, the most important part of every one of these questions is use details from the text to support your answer. The students' responses are then scored on a rubric that indicates their demonstrated ability to analyze and interpret the fable. For instance, in response to the question about how the fable tells you about friendship, a student that provides no evidence of understanding and makes no interpretations would say, you shouldn't laugh at your friends. A response that the story tells friendships is good conveys a superficial interpretation of the text. By expanding on this idea and explaining why friendship is good to have, the student goes beyond the literal level, and you see that in the scores of the 2 and 3 on the rubric. Math performance tasks encourage students to think beyond applying their basic skills by solving math problems that lend themselves to more than one way of solving. Here are 3 sample questions. Note, none of the questions require students to use any math concept that has not previously been taught. The questions are not word problems that require a student to write an equation. Even though I would use my my Algebra 2 skills to solve this, they use their own knowledge to generate the answer. For instance, here the students can draw the 8 heads, the animals, and then add the feet until they get to 22 feet and 5 hands as the answer. Upon completion of the testing, we move into the placement phase. Students' tests are scored, and these scores are fully analyzed. A Z-score is calculated for each assessment, and then the 3 Z-scores are averaged. What is a Z-score, you ask? This statistical calculation explains how a student performed in relation to the class, school, and district average. Once this is done, a student profile is created for every identified student. These score reports are reviewed by a group of teachers, administrators, and members of the ALP leadership team at what we call a building advisory committee meeting. The team conducts a comprehensive review of each child's record and performance during the evaluation and to make a final placement decision. The final decision is based on the combination of the objective test data performance and the subjective judgment from the input forms that were provided by the teachers and parents. All selection decisions reflect the best professional judgment of the committee to determine the best way to meet each child's individual needs. Students are then recommended to ALP if their average Z scores are place them within the top 10% of district achievement or the top 10% of building achievement. There you have it, the entire placement process. Now, the development of gifts and talents are dynamic and constantly developing. Therefore, the placement process extends from 2nd through 8th grade. Opportunities are provided to be considered for placement in ALP throughout their school experience every year. There are 3 dates that are important for you to know. The first one is the parent referral input form. Parent input is a valuable component of the placement process, but please complete this form by Wednesday, November 10th. Due to the nature of the accelerated grade 2 placement timeline, we are unable to accommodate late referrals or input forms. You will have another opportunity to refer your child in the spring for grade 3 ALP placement, should you want to at that time. The second date is actually a date range for the assessments. Students will take all of the assessments between November 15th and December 17th. The building specific dates will be emailed to you on November 12th. If your child is not feeling well or you need to travel during this time, don't worry about it. Makeup tests will be given within the window. The last date is when will you be notified of the placement recommendation. Emails will be sent on Thursday, January 13th. Included in this email will be the scores from all of the assessments your child took and an invitation to another webinar at which we'll be talking about those scores. I'd like to thank you for your attention this morning and extend an invitation to ask questions through the Q&A at this time. If you have questions at any time, please do not hesitate to email us. The best email address is advancedlearning@greenwich.k12.ct.us. That will automatically go to all 4 of us. However, you may communicate with any one of us, but please note, when you communicate with one of us, you communicate with all of us. In doing so, we aim to deliver concise and transparent information. So I'm going to stop the share here. And so I could actually look at you and read the questions. First question, without STAR, what was used for Tier 1? Tier 1, we used all the district benchmarks that were given at the district level. So there was a STAR reading assessment that all grade 2 students take, plus all of the other benchmarks that you have that information within the Linkit portal. Can the parents review the form? You can review your own form after you submit it. Yes. I think that we set that up. Tara helped me set that up. So it automatically now generates. If you did not receive that, I can make sure that you get that. Just email a request to us. Do we email to ensure we are requesting our child to be evaluated? Current grade 4 students are being evaluated in the spring. This is 2nd grade only at this point in time. Is a STAR assessment being used in its assessment tool? No, the STAR assessment is not being used at this time as an assessment tool. We use the NWEA map to assess the students' content and concept knowledge at an above grade level. What are those benchmarks? Is the Linkit used for ALP determination? No, the Linkit benchmark assessment is at a grade level. It is merely used as a screening of those students where they are right now within the grade level curriculum. We do not use that as part of our ALP determination. Would the recording of today's presentation be posted on the website? Yes, as soon as it is rendered, we will get that put up, and Tara will share her screen shortly and walk you through the website. Why the enrichment cannot be offered to all identified students. The enrichment is offered to, if you're identified for reading, you will be pulled out for reading enrichment. If you're identified for math, you'll be pulled out for math enrichment. Can we recommend our child for both language arts as well as math? Yes, you may. Is the ALP pull-out curriculum unique to the student? If a student joins at a later grade, will they be behind? No, they will not be behind. Are the various assessments weighted or considered equally within the body of evidence? No, they're all considered as equal. I do not use a weighted average. We average the 3 Z-scores equally. I may have missed this, but my child accepted into the program this year. They're in the ALP this year. Are they in the ALP program through the completion of middle school, or do they reapply prior to the entry into middle school? We do a full reevaluation at the end of elementary as we go into the middle school. If 10% of the building is aimed to be the population, how can 40% of a class be an ALP? If a student is in the top 10% of the district or the top 10% of the building. So if the top 10% of the building happens to be the top 40% of your class within that building, then you have 40% of those students in ALP. That's not happened. Is there a maximum number of students per grade that can qualify for ALP, or is it all that qualify get in? Yes, if you are in that top 10% of the district or the top 10% of the building, we find a chair for you. What happens at the end of ALP? What is the transition back? What do you mean by the transition back? I'm sorry. What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean by the transition back. I don't know how to turn this. Somebody help me. Clarify that, please. Can you talk a little bit more about the Z-score? It's the average of the 3 assessment combined and then scaled across the kids who took the assessment. Yes, we take the Z-scores with the Z-scores, and we will go into this at the next webinar. So what I do is I take a Z-score for the CogAT, I take a Z-score for the NWEA, we take a Z-score for the performance task, and then we average those 3 Z-scores. And we will be going into that in January, more in depth. I'm summarizing the next question. Is age as a consideration within the standardized assessments? Yes, the age, we use the CogAT as an age normed assessment. Also in consideration, and I forgot to write this in my notes this morning, and it was a question that was brought up. We know that students may be able to read and interpret at one level orderly than they can in written form. And so therefore all students are given the opportunity to dictate their answers using Nearpod. Also the CogAT and the reading performance tests are not reading comprehension tests. We can read those words to them. Any of the math assessments, anything can be read to them. They do not need to read that unless it's a reading comprehension test. Additionally, if a student needs a translation, we will work with them on a translation for that. Are the students taken into a different room? Yes, they are going to be with one of us that you see on the screen right now. We will be doing all of the assessments. We're friendly people and get to know the students, and the building principals are designating the space in which we will be working with those students. Do some students receive tutoring in advance of these tests? If so, how is that factored? Unfortunately, some people feel compelled to tutor their children for the tests, just like there's some parents that feel compelled to tutor to help their child out. The questions in there, by looking at a full body of evidence, we do take that into account. Is that what that looks like? The most you can do to prepare your child is not get them anxious about the test, because nobody can do well when they're nervous. Love them, get them a good night's sleep, give them a hug, and let them know that to do their best, and that's all that you're asking for them. Are the students pulled individually for testing? No, this is a group test. So if there are 10 students being tested for math, there will be 10 students in the room. If there are 30 students being tested, there will be 30 students in the room. I understand the CogAT and NWEA is used as tools as they have in the past. How is a STAR assessment being replaced by another assessment? No, the STAR assessment looked at the students' concepts and content in the same way that the NWEA does. The NWEA is a bit more adaptive. The STAR did not adapt quite as far up as the NWEA. The NWEA will adapt from kindergarten all the way through high school. So if a student is doing well, they are going to get questions at an above level. They may get 5th grade level questions if they're doing well. Okay, Wendy, I believe that comment. It was about the 40%. Yes, last year we had larger numbers in some of the classes due to the cohorting. Does the option to dictate answers have to be requested? No. They're given when we're giving the test. They will have the test where they can write it down on a piece of paper, or they're given the Nearpod, and all students can have access to both. They do not have to specifically ask for that.
Bonnie, I think you missed one question. It was followed up by Kimberly Rainey, who asked about what happens at the end of ALP. She says, describe the transition at the end of ALP. What are the scenarios? Does an ALP math student now have to sit through material they learned 2 years ago? The answer is no, they will stay within ALP once they qualify for ALP in math or reading at grade 2. So there isn't an end. The reassessment from grade 5 to grade 6 is a little bit different, but it's not a repeat of material in the middle school classroom.
Thank you. Are kids going to be trained on the NWEA and CogAT, especially how to listen to the questions being read prior to? Yes. All students have already been worked through some CogAT type questions, and at the beginning of our testing session for the NWEA, we will be going through those actual practice type questions that you have access to on the practice assessment portal that I showed you, that I linked in here. Will we know in advance exactly when the test will be given for our specific child? Yes, in the email that I will send you on November 12th, I will tell you the exact dates for the assessments. I will not tell you which test is being given on a certain date. I will just say these are the dates that your child is going to be taking the test, because both the CogAT and the NWEA are computer-based. They're on the iPads, whereas the performance task does not require an iPad. If for some reason our Wi-Fi goes down in the building, we may need to pivot. And so that's why we use that pivot and use that judiciously. Do parents' referrals have any weight as to who is admitted? No, no, the parent and teacher referrals as to how you got in each of those 3 tiers, those 3 tiers are all equal. We do not weight how they got invited to the test any more than anyone else. It's all about forming that full body of evidence. Are there any other questions? Tara, did you want to walk us through the website?
I would love to. Let me just share here. All right, hit me with a thumbs up if you can see the website on my screen. Excellent. Okay, so I just want to show you how I got to this piece. If you go to the Greenwich Public Schools website, we're going to live under teaching and learning. Within teaching and learning, there is a left-hand column that says academic content areas. We will then bring you to the advanced learning program website page. We're constantly updating this with information as it becomes pertinent to parents, but a brief overview of what we have. We have our mission and ALP, our leadership team, and our email. Again, reminder, if you email this email, you're getting all of us. We also have our quarterly newsletter. The newsletter list was compiled based on current ALP students in grades 3 through 5. As a 2nd grade parent, if you are not on this newsletter list, you can sign up by clicking on the newsletter and subscribing or emailing our advanced learning email. These will come out about quarterly, but we will archive all newsletter messages here in our quarterly updates. You also have direct contact information to Ms. Bonnie O'Regan, as well as her incredible administrative assistant who can help with scheduling meetings, phone calls, etc. Next, I want to bring you to some 4 important tabs with more information for parents. We have information about placement, curriculum, informational meetings, and parent resources. Under placement, we go through the referral process, the evaluation process, the placement process, and then timelines by grade. Our timelines by grade will be updated for grades 3 and 4 and 5, 6, and 7 as those become available to us. What you need to know is under referral, you have the link here for your parent referral form. Next, I'm going to show you curriculum. We have an overview of advanced learning in grades 3 through 8, as well as the grade 2 enrichment. Then we have information about math, reading, writing, and social studies, middle school seminar, and middle school advanced science. So information for our parents there. We have a tab about informational meetings, which maybe is how you got to your Zoom meeting today. And I have a PDF of all of the slides that Bonnie presented today, all set, ready to go. Once our videos have rendered from today's presentation, you'll see a video from last night's presentation that went through the same information, perhaps with different questions, as well as today's video. If you wanted to learn more, I have another link to our referral form just in case. And then we have our backup of newsletters, outreach members in PTAC, and some links for parents who are curious about more information. That's a quick overview of our website. See, we have one more question that popped up in the Q&A, Bonnie. You say that if a child starts ALP after grade 2, they won't be behind. How is that possible if ALP students are learning 1.5 years of math each year? Oh, Bonnie, you're muted.
Thank you for letting me know. The math in 2nd grade is enrichment. They will not be doing a year above grade level math. Once they get into if they are placed at the end of 3rd grade for the 4th grade, the students who have been there have done indeed all of the 3rd grade and half of the 4th grade. And what we'll do is we use pre-assessments and make sure that those students have the prerequisite skills in order to access the curriculum at that point in time.
We'll hold off in case there's another question or two. Otherwise, all the information planned to be present today has been presented, and you can look out for those videos to be posted on the website by tomorrow morning once they are done rendering.
Thank you for joining us.